Wrapping up an eventful day here in Las Vegas, and who knows what else is going to happen. For now, though, we just wrapped up the ceremonial weigh-ins from inside the T-Mobile Arena here in Sin City. Once again, I'm Ariel Helwani. That is Shaun Al-Shatti. The sun is setting on, a disaster of a day for the UFC. By now you know Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Tony Ferguson will not be taking place tomorrow night. There was an attempt to make Tony Ferguson versus Michael Johnson. That did not come to fruition. They could not come to terms on a deal for that fight. So UFC 209 proceeds with 11 fights. The fight that will be replacing Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Tony Ferguson, it's Cynthia Calvillo versus Amanda Cooper, which, by the way, was the curtain jerker originally as we started this day, which is pretty amazing. However, before we get into our preview video, want to quickly talk to Shaun about what happened before the ceremonial weigh-ins. And the reason I say today was kind of a disaster, well, it could have been even worse because they had this press conference with George St. Pierre, Dana White, and Michael Bisping planned. The problem was a scene that was very reminiscent of a few years ago. Nick Diaz instead of Michael Bisping, George St. Pierre sitting at the dais by himself. They could not find Michael Bisping for several minutes. The press conference started, 15, 20 minutes late, and they had to start it without him. And then he shows up in, I think maybe, I don't know what we want to call it, some kind of altered state. What did you think of the press conference?
It was fun. It was really fun. It was a good introduction to this fight that I feel like wasn't a very popular fight, but that was a very interesting, it was a fun exchange to see them kind of go back and forth. You kind of feel for George because he's not a trash talker and English isn't his first language, and Bisping was just loading up on him, going so hard in the paint there. It was fun. I feel like it kind of, if a lot of people were on the fence whether they liked that fight or not, I'm sure it sold some people.
Okay, so let me ask you this. What did you think about the fight when it was originally announced? Were you one of those who said, nah, I don't like it, it doesn't make sense, George 185, Romero's getting screwed, etc.? And if you did feel that way, did this press conference change your opinion at all?
I actually didn't feel that way. I was one of the few who kind of didn't mind it. I always thought that was fun, even just when George initially proposed it last June.
Yeah.
Just the idea of the history behind it, and the all-time wins leaders guys going against each other for supremacy and that. I always thought it was kind of fun, and Yoel, you feel really bad for his situation, but Dana said he's going to take care of him.
Whatever that means.
Whatever that means.
An unmarked bag with some $1 bills or I don't know. We don't know what it means.
Yeah.
He would not say, but yes, it's nice to at least hear that.
But yeah, and so going into it, for me at least, not minding that this fight was happening, this sold me on the fight. I actually am really kind of looking forward to this now. It was fun seeing GSP back. It was very nostalgic almost, and the dynamic between them is just fascinating. And it seems already that Michael's going to be talking about the size and the idea that you picked me because you think that I'm easy. You had Anderson this whole time. You didn't go for him. The moment I'm champion, you called me out. That's going to be a fun dynamic to watch.
It's funny because I feel like when Bisping, when he beat Anderson, got the title shot on short notice, beat Rockhold, all of a sudden this, this heel for the last 9 or so years became a babyface. Yeah. He became this, nice story. And today he just crapped all over that. He shows up as the drunken heel, disrespecting the returning GSP. And didn't it kind of feel like on this sort of dark, cloudy day, not literally, but in terms of UFC news, Khabib pulling out hours before 209, GSP kind of returning, that video, I don't know if you saw it online, of him walking into the cage for the first time. It gave me goosebumps. I mean, this is legitimately one of the 3 best fighters in the history of this game. You can make a strong case, the best ever, right? Didn't lose on his way out, all that stuff. And to see him back for a minute kind of made me forget about everything. Although it did kind of feel like a disaster, happening in front of us with Bisping, not appearing, but you knew he was going to appear. Yeah. I thought, though, that Bisping played it perfectly. Oh, yeah. He had to go full heel and then some. I didn't know he'd go that far in the first press conference, but did you feel like GSP was sort of taken aback by it all? Yes. He didn't expect him to go that full force?
100%, because these guys have kind of been angling for each other for the past year. Yeah. And it was almost like this team dynamic of like the Conor Nate Diaz thing, where like, we want this fight, we're going to work together to get this fight. And the moment it's signed, Bisping completely turns on it, and you're right. Because GSP, if there's a spectrum between, heel and babyface, GSP's all the way on one side. So Bisping going all the way on the other, that's, like I said, that's a really fun dynamic that I'm interested to watch.
Does GSP Bisping get 1 million buys?
No, I don't think so. No. I think obviously we have a long way to go, and it'll be centered around, it looks like International Fight Week Maybe that's what Dana.
They're
seemed like.
hoping, though.
Yeah.
I'm still told around fall, but that's what they're
Yeah.
hoping. It's clear from today.
And historically, that's kind of a big
Yeah.
weekend, and they always have a couple things lined up. So maybe, but I mean, this seems more to me like a GSP, basically maybe like a 750, 800 type of card, but we got a long way to go.
You know, again, as you just said, a long way to go, but International Fight Week does coincide with the return of John Jones. And if you can maybe do John Jones versus either Rumble Johnson or DC, and also the Cody Garbrandt Dillashaw fight, I don't know if they stack the deck like that, but that could probably do $1 million, right?
Maybe. I don't know. I feel like historically when we've seen these kind of ultra stacked cards, I don't know if that makes much of a difference in terms of pay-per-view buys. I think I've heard Meltzer kind of say something similar. So that it's always going to be the top draw. Whatever the top draw is, that's kind of what it's going to sell. But again, we have a long way to go, and it seems like the promotion for this fight is going to be really fun.
Yes.
So we'll see.
Okay, last thing about this. I'm putting you on the spot, but I have to, just because it's such a fun, like, out of left field, weird fight. Who's your prediction? Right now, first time you see them square off, who are you leaning towards?
Honestly, I lean Bisping, just because size is a thing in this sport.
Did you think it was very noticeable?
I don't know. It's hard because George is wearing a suit
and
everything. But I mean, Bisping is just a much bigger guy than GSP. When it comes, he's right. He was a light heavyweight, and he was a pretty successful light heavyweight. So I don't know. I mean, George has even talked about going to lightweight. Like, there's a pretty vast size difference there, and you know, the 3.5 year layoff. I lean Bisping now, but we'll see.
All right. Okay. After the press conference, which, again, started off a little rough, but I think was a home run for the UFC, if we're being honest. We had the ceremonial weigh-ins. We had the 11 fights in front of us, the 22 fighters. Of course, no Khabib, no Ferguson. But Ferguson did show up afterwards and had a very little quick message for the crowd. I thought he was being the company man, and, you know, it was nice to see him at least.
Yeah.
Now we're a few hours removed from this morning's events. We've been able to digest the news that Khabib Ferguson is no longer happening tomorrow night. How do we feel about the card? Like, is it just going to be this cloud hanging over tomorrow night, or are you able to put it aside and say, look, we've got Woodley Thompson, we've got Overeem versus Hunt, we've got Rashad Evans at 185. Are you able to separate the two?
It's hard, man, because I mean, you're talking to me. I was looking forward to that fight so damn much. I was so excited to come here for this week just for that fight. And it's hard to separate now the cloud that kind of still looms over this, man. And you know, it's interesting because I was talking to our cameraman Casey about this throughout the day, and the idea when they were booking Tyron, it was either Wonder Boy or Maya, more or less, right? And I think my opinion is if this was Woodley Maya, I would still be pretty interested in this card just because that's something new. That's like an interesting style matchup that I just kind of was really interested to see. And I feel like I would still be disappointed right now, but I wouldn't be as disappointed as I am currently just because we saw this fight like 4 months ago and it was a great fight. I'm sure this is going to be a really good fight, but something about it, I mean, even Tyron just doesn't seem excited for it. Right. I don't know, something about it. I feel like if it was Woodley Maya, that would have at least been something a little to look forward to. Instead, we have something that we've already seen, and you know, you have a couple good fights on the card, but yeah, it's hard to separate kind of the cloud that's still looming over this whole situation.
It does sort of feel like a tale of two cards as well. The undercard not as interesting as the main card, but let's try to get excited about the main card.
Yes.
Wonderboy Woodley was a great fight at UFC 205. It was the fight of the night on a very stacked card. Let's not forget that. That was the UFC's debut at MSG. Remind the people, who did you have winning the fight? How did you score it? Maybe you scored it a draw. And do you expect to see a vastly different fight on Saturday night?
I scored it a draw.
Okay.
I gave it pretty much all the way through the 10-8 round at Woodley and then the first and then the rest to Wonderboy. You know what? Honestly, I do expect to see somewhat of a similar fight tomorrow on Saturday. It's only been about 4 months, like 4 months. And these guys, I mean, I was talking to Dean Thomas, Tyron's coach, earlier this week, and he said something more or less was, you know, these guys have been doing what they're doing their whole lives. They're not going to change much over the course of that small amount of time. You can only change so much. And so it's these little adjustments. And if, you know, both guys are going to try to make these little adjustments, but I feel more or less like Tyron now has been exposed to Wonderboy's style. It's a very unique style, and I feel like it throws a lot of people off when they initially get in there, but he's had 25 minutes to kind of see that style, deal with it, feel it, and then, you know, go back and study tape on it. I think he's going to make the necessary adjustments, but in general, I feel like we're going to see a similar fight.
Okay, so you are leaning towards Tyron.
Yes, I am picking Tyron.
Do you think he gets the finish as he's been predicting?
You know what? I think he does.
Wow.
I think he's going to try to use his wrestling more, and in general, like I said, the uniqueness of Wonderboy's style is not going to be such a shock to him.
Okay.
And I feel like he's going to be able to get it done.
So in a way, rematching Wonderboy, or just the rematch in general, I should say, favors Tyron more so than it favors Wonderboy. Wonderboy getting a second look at Woodley isn't as big of a deal as Woodley getting a second look at Wonderboy because Wonderboy is such a unique fighter. Is that what you're saying?
In my opinion, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a pretty interesting thing to really look out for tomorrow, because I thought the first time they fought back in November that Woodley actually fought a great fight. I mean, he fought Wonderboy perfectly, better than Rory McDonald, better than Johnny Hendricks, of course.
Sure.
And you know, you can make a case for him. You can make a case for him winning the fight or a draw. It's very hard to make a case for Wonderboy winning that fight, right?
And that's kind of leads me to one thing that's been interesting to me to watch throughout the lead up to this fight, but this week in particular, is the difference in demeanor between the two guys. I mean,
what are you seeing?
Tyron seems like he doesn't care about this, man. He seems like this is all bothering him, that he's having to do this.
Is that a problem, though?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe. There's a very chance it could be, but maybe not. But meanwhile, Wonderboy is reveling in this. He's really enjoying himself. He seems to have taken everything in stride. Whereas Tyron just seems like he's bothered that he's having to deal with this whole situation all over again. Maybe there's something to that, maybe there's not, but it's just an interesting dynamic to see play out between them.
Yeah, and let's not forget about the road to get to this point with all the drama and you know, the race talk and the drama queen and all this stuff. Has he been focusing too much on that? Maybe. Is he going to fight with too much emotion, try to prove people wrong? Too big of a chip on his shoulder? These are all fascinating things to look out for tomorrow.
And it seems like along those lines, he's kind of been weighed down by it almost during fight week. I mean, he didn't want to talk about GSP a couple days, and every time the race stuff gets brought up, and then Dana White feud and just everything, it seems like he's having to shoulder so much on his plate right now. Maybe it is too much.
Okay, let's now skip over to Mark Hunt and Alistair Overeem. Okay. You talk about someone dealing with a lot. Mark Hunt is dealing with a lot. This is unprecedented. Mark Hunt is currently suing the UFC, and they tried to dismiss it this week. That's not actually happening as of right now. It could happen, but thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that. But this is a fascinating thing. I mean, we've never seen anything like this, and it was interesting to see that he did shake Dana White's hand up on the stage.
For the first time, I think.
Yes, but him and Overeem did not shake hands. Why? Well, maybe because Mark Hunt has been outright calling Overeem a cheater all week, and Overeem does not seem to like that very much. Let's talk about the sort of drama leading up to this fight for Mark Hunt. Do you feel like there's just too much going on? Or does he strike you as the kind of guy who's able to separate that as he steps inside the cage?
I mean, I don't understand how it couldn't be weighing on him, frankly. I mean, you talked to him we both talked to him during media day on what is it at this point? Thursday. Thursday. He gets angry very quickly about this. Like he'll rant for minutes and minutes at a time with that same anger he had months ago. Like this is still very raw and fresh for him. And the idea that he's here now and kind of dealing with everything, he said all along that, you know, I get punched in the face for a living, I fight people for a living, this is nothing. But it seems like, again, a Tyron type of situation where he's just carrying this weight around him this week. So maybe. Yeah,
he's also saying that Overeem kind of represents that struggle that he has. So does he go out there and try to swing for the fences right away to try to take out all that anger on Overeem, or is he fighting a more calculated, calm fight? Hopefully he doesn't fight with too much emotion, but he is clearly looking at Overeem as a representation of all these things that are bothering him as far as PEDs.
He's projecting all of that on Alistair. Like he's called him a cheater in 100 different ways over the past 3 days.
And then on the flip side, you have Alistair Overeem, who's coming off this title loss. He has to rebound as well. He's looking to redeem himself, climb that ladder. Let's put aside all the drama and just talent versus talent. Who do you favor in the fight?
You know what? I came into this week, I was going to pick Mark Hunt. But just seeing kind of what he's been having to deal with and where his mind is, again, he gets his trigger on this gets flipped very quickly, and he gets very angry very quickly about it. I almost wonder if he just isn't even as concerned about the fight as he should be, which just seems weird to say about somebody who's been in the fight game for so long. But I'm leaning over him now, to be honest.
Do you think he knocks him out?
No.
Decision?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move along now to Rashad Evans making his middleweight debut against Judo Dan Kelly, Mr. Dad Bod himself, representing all his dads very nicely. I thought Rashad Evans looked great at 185, and he did not use a nutritionist for this cut, his first time cutting down to 185. Interesting to see that he had Tyrone Spong with him, who, if you've been following this Black Zillion breakup story, Tyrone Spong is staying with the whatever Black Zillions are right now, but he's still with his good friend Rashad Evans. That not as important. What did you think of Rashad, how he looked earlier this morning when he weighed in at 185?
It's interesting because you look at him earlier this week, There were little signs where he looked tired and he kind of looked drawn out. I was wondering whether he was having a difficult cut, but you asked him and he said everything was fine. Today he looked great.
Yeah.
He looked, in excellent shape, and he was smiling the whole entire time at weigh-ins. It's interesting. I mean, the 185 is something that's been talked about with Rashad for so long. He was never a big light heavyweight, and obviously this is now kind of like this last-ditch effort to sort of resuscitate his career. But he's looked good so far.
Do you like this matchmaking?
Yeah.
He was originally supposed to fight someone like Tim Kennedy and all this. Do you like the idea of him fighting someone, with all due respect to Dan Kelly, he's not the upper echelon. It's a way to introduce himself in a new weight class. Do you like this? Because they don't typically do this sort of thing.
Absolutely. I love this, and I'm with our good friend Luke Thomas on this. I feel like tune-up fights are excellent, and we need more of them in this sport instead of throwing guys right back to the Sharks.
So Rashad Evans has won at heavyweight in the UFC. He's won, of course, at light heavyweight, former champion. Will he win in his middleweight debut?
I don't know. I've gone back and forth on this, to be honest.
Wow.
It's weird with Rashad because he's a guy, obviously he has accomplished so much throughout such a long course of time, but it's been so long since we've seen a very consistent kind of nostalgic level performance from him. It's been a long time since we've seen that actual Rashad. Yeah. And last time we saw him was the Glover fight. That obviously ended very quickly. And before that, there were these string of performances in and out. Well, first he was injured in and out, and then there were these string of performances where it was lackadaisical and strange. And then he's everything he's gone through since with the New York, and then what was
Toronto?
Yeah, Toronto. Just not getting cleared, and him not even knowing whether he was going to be able to continue to do this. Mentally, that's a difficult thing to deal with. But I think I'm going to pick Rashad.
After all that?
After all that.
Wow.
After all that, I think he looked excellent at 185, and Dan Kelly's a very good fighter, but I just think Rashad's still going to be able to have that edge on him.
Very tough, very durable. Decision or finish?
Decision.
Yeah. Lando Venata versus David Tamor. Who you got?
Lando Venata, man. I have been so damn impressed with this guy. I think this guy, the introduction fight with Tony Ferguson, that was remarkable. Maybe Tony was overlooking him a little bit, but still, to be able to do that to Tony Ferguson on, I don't even know how much, like a week's notice?
Yeah,
that's
a couple weeks.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And then to come out and get that spinning heel kick knockout of Makdessi, I'm looking forward to seeing big things from Lando over the course of the year. He says he wants to be champ or top 5 ranked by the end of the year. I'm not going to doubt him, man, frankly. The work he's been doing at Jackson's, he's in Jackson OG, despite how young he is, which is a very interesting situation to look at, and the work he does with Brandon Gibson. I'm picking Lando, and I think it's going to be a spectacular knockout.
Yeah, it was interesting to see them at the ceremonial weigh-ins. Tamor was very fired up, and Lando was just kind of like, oh, this is fun. He has a very calm, cool, groovy demeanor, if you will. So that's a fun fight. And why not, just to round out the main card, Cynthia Calvillo against Amanda Cooper. Do you have a pick for that one? You weren't expecting this.
I'll go Amanda Cooper.
Okay. Cynthia Calvillo, a member of Team Alpha Male. Uriah Faber, very excited about her. Amanda Cooper.
I'll go Cooper.
Fair enough. There are things. Hey, speaking of Team Alpha Male, get in here, Uriah. Wow. We were just talking about you.
We're here?
I can't believe this. This is what happens. The MMA Fighting Preview Show. We were just talking about Cynthia Calvillo, and I must say, full disclosure, Shaun Al-Shatti picked against her. I'm sorry. What do you have to say? Tell us why we have to be excited.
She will accept you as her fan after she wins tonight.
She replaced the Ferguson-Khabib fight on the pay-per-view. You know this, right?
No, I did not know that.
See breaking news right here.
But I'm going to tell you.
Yes.
You guys are not going to be disappointed. Cynthia, we bring these guys in from all over the country, and when they get a little out of line, we put her with Cynthia, and he mops up the dudes.
She have a little Diaz in her with that face-off.
She's a gangster. She's a real gangster. So you guys are in for a treat.
Wow. So it is pay-per-view worthy because the fans were a little disappointed with the replacement.
I mean, she's going to fight till death if need be.
Wow.
And that's the kind of fighter you want to see.
Do you have a prediction?
I think she's probably going to win some sort of submission in the late second, early third.
And while we have you, how about Wonderboy versus Woodley? Prediction?
I'm going to go with Woodley.
Okay.
He's got that athleticism. I think, I love both those guys as fighters, but I think the athleticism and the wrestling is going to be the difference.
Mark Hunt, Alistair Overeem?
Ooh. I think Hunt is going to get him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rashad Evans?
Before?
Yes, 2008 in Dream.
And who won?
Overeem.
How did he beat him?
Submission arm lock.
Okay.
First round. Early. But this was weird.
I forgot about Overeem's ground game. He's actually he's got a great guillotine too.
Yes.
either Hunt standing or Overeem on the ground.
Okay, last one. Rashad Evans making his debut at 185 against Judo Daniel Kelly. Not sure how much you know about the man, but Rashad, that look kind of let me know not much. But do you like Rashad making the debut at 185? He looks svelte.
I don't know what that means, but what does that
Cut.
mean?
Nice.
Svelte.
Fit.
Yeah, we're going with Rashad on this one. He's my boy.
Okay. All right. Good.
All right.
Good to see you. Everything
Good to
good?
see you, buddy.
Yeah, we did good.
Hey.
We didn't win.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You know, I thought that you had both those awards in the bag, and of course you knew that Team Alpha Male was the.
Yeah. What happened?
Just it's a lull. It's going to make it more exciting for next year.
Okay.
You know?
All right. Well, it's good to see you.
All right.
And look out for Uriah on the Ultimate Fighter.
We'll accept you back after the
Kind
fight.
of convinced me. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of want to change my
Please.
pick, but I've already.
She is a gangster, Cynthia.
How much you weigh right now? How's retirement like?
160 maybe.
Okay, so you're enjoying. Get some Shake Shack. Let loose a little bit.
Okay, if you say so.
All right. There he is, ladies and gentlemen. Uriah Faber. You never know who's going to stop by on the MMA Fighting Preview Show. You see, we were able to make lemonade out of lemons here today, right? I mean, the day started off a little slow, but we got a Urijah Faber cameo in our preview show. That's a first for us, right? Yeah, it was good. I think so. I don't know if we've ever had a fighter walk in. Maybe we have. We've been doing these for a while. Anyhow, we're out of time. Let's wrap up. UFC 209, it's not going to have Khabib and Ferguson on it, but it's going to have some pretty good fights. And also, don't forget about our man Paul Craig on the Fight Pass prelims against Tyson Pedro. We don't know what he says, but he's a very fun fighter, and he showed up with the face paint, the Scottish war paint, if you will, the kilt. It's all very fun. So there's still a lot to like about UFC 209. We appreciate you watching our coverage up until this point. We'll be back Saturday night for all your usual post-fight coverage, so do not go anywhere. Until now, for Shaun, Ariel, Casey, Esther, we'll see you Saturday night. Enjoy the fights.